Have you ever been driving down the highway and you see a logging truck full of logs, and your immediate thought is inevitably those logs are going to come off that logging truck right as I go to pass them, or when I'm right behind that truck, and they're going to crush me and I'm going to die, and I won't even have time to call and say goodbye to my dog? No? Just me? All right. Welcome back to Here's the Deal. I'm Laura Barnes with Leadership Beyond Sport, and today we're going to talk about catastrophizing, also known as the sky is falling or Chicken Little syndrome. And today we're going to talk about how this is actually a useful tool when used correctly, because it's not the end result, which is what a lot of people do when they catastrophize. And that's what we're going to talk about, how you avoid it being the last stop. It's a tool in your tool belt. You can use it to improve your current situation or to mitigate an outcome that you don't want. So here's what I mean by that. When we catastrophize, we go to worst case scenario, right? It's my significant other broke up with me, and now because we were living together, I don't have a place to live. I can't pay my bills. I am destitute, and also nobody's ever going to love me again, and I'll probably never have sex for the rest of my life. Yeah, that's where we go with that. That's what our brain does when we allow it to think like, well, what if this happens? And then what if that happens? And then this would obviously happen. And then inevitably this would happen. We get to that place of, holy crap, now my life is terrible because that person broke up with me. Or maybe it's, now my life is terrible because I didn't get that promotion. Or I didn't get hired in my dream company right out of college. Or whatever, fill in the blank, right? Whatever it is that keeps you up at night, that causes you anxiety, that makes you feel scared or fearful or upset in some way, a supposed negative emotion, right? So when we use catastrophizing as a tool, it actually can be really helpful. What a lot of people do, unfortunately, is something bad happens, right? There's a huge fight in the relationship, or maybe you get passed over for a promotion, or you don't hear back from your dream company. So that one negative outcome or that one negative situation causes you to hop in your car and you start driving towards catastrophe land. And instead of it being a pit stop where you refuel, grab some snacks, and head out on your way, you unpack and you just set up camp in catastrophe land, and that perpetuates the cycle of anxiety and nerves, which leads to depression and unhealthy behaviors and all kinds of other lovely things that we talk about in the mental health space. But how can you use catastrophizing as a tool to either prevent or pivot? First, let's talk about catastrophizing as a prevention tool. When you catastrophize and you think about the worst case scenario, the worst possible outcome that could happen as a result of X, generally speaking, you individually are somehow involved in that outcome occurring, right? We'll use the example of a relationship. Your significant other breaks up with you. Were you the best possible partner you could have been to that person? Did you show up to the best of your ability every single day in that relationship? Doesn't mean you were perfect every day. Best of your ability is not perfection. That's a different video. But did you show up to the best of your ability every single day in that relationship? Were you the things that you believe a loving, supportive, good partner should be? If the answer isn't yes, then you have the ability to take personal responsibility for how you show up and what you do on a daily basis right now in the relationship to hopefully avoid that ultimate outcome that you don't want of your significant other breaking up with you. So that's how we prevent. We take a long, hard look at what we are doing and how we are showing up every single day in that situation. With college, are you showing up every day? Are you involved in your classes? Are you networking? Are you talking to your professors? Are you doing everything you can to position yourself properly for that ultimate job that you want when you graduate? If it's the promotion, if you're already employed and you're looking to take the next step in your career, are you having conversations with people? Are you making sure they know that that's what you want? Are you asking for opportunities to take on more responsibility so that you're better positioned when that opportunity presents itself? If you can say yes, and again, you have to create your own criteria. What does being that person mean? How do you avoid that situation, that negative catastrophizing outcome happening? It has to come from you. You have to be able to look at yourself and say, okay, this is what it would take to get me to that next level to avoid the bad thing happening. And I'm doing everything in my power to avoid the bad thing happening. I'm showing up to the best of my ability, bringing all of who I am, being X, Y, and Z, whatever X, Y, and Z means for you in your situation. So it's again taking a long, hard look at yourself, the role you play, and how you are positioning yourself and essentially trying to avoid the negative outcome by being the best version of yourself. That's our prevention step. However, as many of you know, when other people are involved, we don't ultimately get to decide how the thing plays out. Always. Sometimes we do. You might be the person breaking up with a significant other, not being broken up with. So sometimes we can be the one deciding. But when other people are involved, generally speaking, we don't have ultimate say. So let's assume that whatever you catastrophized, when the sky was falling, that outcome happens. Maybe you get passed over for the promotion. Maybe your significant other does break up with you. Maybe you don't get the dream job out of college. What's your pivot plan? And when I say pivot plan, I mean, what are the 2 or 3 things, or who are the 2 or 3 people who can help you or support you or be the alternate? And I don't mean that in a relationship situation, but I do mean that, like, let's use the relationship as an example. If your significant other breaks up with you and you're living together, and so you go into that place of like, I don't know where I'm going to live. I have to move out. I have to find my own place. I don't make enough money to pay for my own place. Like, oh my God. Is there anybody in your life who would let you sleep on their couch for a week while you figure it out? Are there relatives who have a spare bedroom, or friends who have a spare bedroom, right? So the living situation can be handled. Are you working currently? If not, you could be working. Can you get a job? If not, why not, right? Like, so we start looking at the pivot plan. We look at the things that we could do differently should that outcome occur. And the pivot plan is not necessarily about jumping ship and saying, screw you, I'm going to break up with you before you break up with me, or I'm going to quit my job before you have a chance to fire me. It's about saying, I'm going to see this through to completion. But if that worst case scenario happens, these are the things that I can do so that it doesn't end in complete and utter failure and defeat and death. Because at the end of the day, the question is always, but did you die? So if the answer is no, you didn't die, what's your pivot plan? What are the things that you can put in place? What are the ways that you can survive this and find another outcome? Obviously, if you're employed, you are employable, which means you could find another job. If you get passed over for the promotion and you choose to stay with the company, you can ask about ways to improve your performance so that you're ready for the next promotion cycle. You can switch to a different department where maybe you'd have more likelihood of being promoted. You could choose to leave the company and find a company where you would be promoted or you would be fast-tracked to a leadership position. So that might be your pivot plan, is coming up with 2 to 3 scenarios, 2 to 3 options that you can fall back on should the worst case scenario happen. You don't get hired in your dream career, your dream job, or with your dream company right out of college. Okay. Can you take some time off and regroup and figure out what's next? Can you go work an entry-level position at the same company? Maybe not your dream job, but at least gets you in the door with the company so you can start working your way up. Can you go work for one of their competitors doing similar work to what you thought you wanted with them, so that the next time they have a position open, you're more qualified and you bring knowledge of your competitor to the table. Can you do a career assessment, decide if that's really what you want to do, and then look at opportunities to take that skill set or the thing that you really want and apply it in a different area? Again, it could be a different industry, it could be a different company, it could just be starting at a lower level. Having a pivot plan is one of the fastest ways to know your own resiliency, to know your own creativity. Because if you look at yourself and you say, well, there's nothing I can do. If I don't get hired in my dream job out of college, I'm screwed and I'm going to be living in my parents' basement for the rest of my life. You haven't challenged yourself enough. You haven't stretched far enough to know your capacity and to know how resilient you truly are. If you're struggling to think of what your pivot plan might be, if you're at a place where you're like, you know what, I really don't even know what I would do. If that situation happened, I don't know how I would pivot. I don't know how I would bounce back from that. I want you to do a retrospective. I want you to look back at a time in your life when you overcame adversity, when something went horribly wrong and you were able to bounce back. You were able to create a better situation for yourself. And yes, it might have been hard and it might have been exhausting and it might have been exactly what you didn't want to do because it sucked. But the fact of the matter is, you did it. You did the things that got you to where you are today. You have the job that currently passed you over for promotion, which means you were able to get the job, which means you are able to get another job. You got the relationship. If this person breaks up with you, why would you think you can't get another relationship? You got this one. Again, if you're showing up to the best of your ability and you're being everything that you think a good partner should be, it's their loss. So when you're in that point of coming up with your pivot plan and you're overwhelmed by feeling like maybe there's nothing you can pivot to, or the ideas just aren't coming to you, or you're just so deep in catastrophe land that you can't figure it out, take a walk down memory lane. I promise you there is a memory lane in catastrophe land, which, by the way, I think is a way cooler game than Candyland. We should create that. Let me know if you have any ideas. So you're in catastrophe land and you're freaking out about something. Take a walk down memory lane. When is a time in your life, think about a time in your life where you overcame something. Maybe it's not as similar to this, maybe it's not exactly the same, but it might have some similar feels, right? It was adversity, it was a challenge, it was something that was really, really, really overwhelming. And you figured out a way to overcome. You figured out a way to get from there to where you are now, which means you can figure out a way to get from where you are now to where you want to be in the future. It doesn't have to be living in catastrophe land for the rest of your life and spinning and spiraling and getting caught up in all the what ifs and the challenges and the oh my gods. Sometimes it can be about, all right, what are some creative solutions to this problem? If this company doesn't want me, that company over there probably does, because they're our competitor, right? You can flip it in reverse. Like, I'll take what I learned here and give it to somebody else. I'll take what I learned in this personal relationship and this romantic relationship when that person breaks up with me and be an even better partner for the next person. And when the fallout happens, if the fallout happens, I'm resourceful enough that I can find a place to live. I can find a way to pay my bills. I can find a way to put food in my face hole. You have the capacity and the resilience to overcome whatever is thrown at you. So use catastrophizing as a tool, not the end point. Be patient with the process, because catastrophizing, yeah, it's great. It is a great tool. I love it. I do it all the time, not just when there are logging trucks on the highway. I honestly catastrophize almost every day in different areas. Catastrophizing can be a really, really great tool. But you also have to realize that that terrible end result you're thinking about might not happen for 5 years, 10 years, 6 months. I mean, you have no idea in the grand scheme of things how long it will take to get from where you are now to that worst possible outcome you're imagining. So you have to be patient with yourself. You have to be willing to Keep putting one foot in front of the other. Go through with the process. You got passed over for the promotion. That's fine. Just keep doing the job that you're doing for now. And maybe the next promotion cycle things will come about that'll change that outcome. You didn't get the dream job right out of college. Okay, that's fine. You can get a job and keep moving forward. It doesn't mean you need to change career paths or go get another degree or commit to living in the woods for the rest of your life. You don't necessarily have to pivot right now, right away, but the pivot plan is in place for when you get to that moment where you're looking over the edge of a cliff and you're like, holy F, it's go time. Like it's pivot time. That's when you call in the pivot plan. So again, catastrophize. Go to that worst case scenario. Let yourself go there and get a little caught up in it and like have a minor anxiety attack. I do it. I honestly do. I let myself go there and I let myself have freak out moments. And then I take a deep breath and I say to myself, okay, am I doing everything possible right now today to avoid that happening? If the answer is no, all right, what could I shift? What could I do better? What could I do more of so that that is less of a likelihood, that negative outcome? If the answer is yes, then I just have to keep doing that and have faith that my positive actions, positive behaviors will ultimately lead me to the desired outcome, not the negative outcome. And then I put a pivot plan in place, which is a lot of P's. Pivot plan in place. I put my pivot plan in place and I say, okay, if that happens, what skills, what resources are available to me? Who do I know that could help me overcome that situation should it occur? Not when it occurs, if it occurs. If that really negative outcome occurs, what am I capable of doing? What skills do I possess? What resources are at my disposal? And who do I know who can help me? If you think about those things, you will have a prevention plan as well as a pivot plan to help you from catastrophizing to the point where you get stuck, because the sky isn't falling, bruh. It's just raining a little. You'll be totally fine.